Welcome back to this week's episode of Let's Talk Golf, a bi-weekly podcast featuring all things golf. I'm your host, PGA professional Mark Guttenberg. This week, I'm excited to talk with my good friend Erika Larkin, the PGA Director of Instruction at the club at Creighton Farms in Aldie, Virginia. Erika has been teaching golf for over 15 years and has been recognized as a Golf Digest Best Young Teachers in America's Top 40 Under 40 since 2012. She was also voted as the Teacher of the Year in the Middle Atlantic PGA section in 2012 and is currently ranked as the #1 teacher in Virginia by Golf Digest. She has just released a book called A True Swing. I will be talking with Erika about her teaching philosophy, her book, and her rise to become one of the elite teachers in the game today. This episode is brought to you by TaylorMade Golf. Try the new TP5 and TP5X golf ball played by the best players in the game. And don't forget the new and improved M1 and M2 driver, fairway woods, hybrids, and irons. Find out why the best play the best by TaylorMade Golf. Welcome to Let's Talk Golf. We're here with Erika Larkin, who's a good friend of mine and the Director of Instruction at Creighton Farms in Aldie, Virginia. As we said in the intro, Erika is one of the top teachers in the state, is ranked by Golf Digest. She's #1 in the state. And Erika, welcome to Let's Talk Golf.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me on today.
Oh, we're so happy to have you on and talk a little bit about the golf swing and teaching and give our listeners something to learn from this experience. So, first of all, Erika, I'd just like to ask you, why did you want to become a golf professional?
Well, it's funny. I actually didn't start out knowing that I wanted to become a golf professional. I just knew I wanted to be around golf. And when I graduated from James Madison University in 2002, I ended up starting working in the business with American Golf Corporation in a marketing and membership sales role. And did that for about a year and a half before I got roped into some teaching on the side by a good mutual friend of ours, Steve Loescher,
Sure.
Who's really done a ton of instruction in this area as well, and programming.
That's the Nike camps, right?
At the time, it was the Nike Golf Learning Center at Reston, and it was one of the properties I was affiliated with. And so he invited me to help out with some clinics. He knew I had a playing background, and he thought it would be good for me and good for him. And it turned out I really liked to teach. So he encouraged me to become a PGA professional. He said, go take your PAT. And, follow that route. It won't hurt you with being in the golf business. And I did that. And soon enough, when I passed my PAT, I realized that made a lot of sense to move into a green grass type of facility, private club, where I could pursue my certification to become a PGA member and pursue my passion for teaching that I had then discovered. So it wasn't intentional. I knew I wanted to be in golf. And then it turned out that I did follow the path to becoming a PGA member and a teaching professional.
So as a competitor, did you play in college? Did you play a lot of junior golf? I mean, what was your competitive background like?
Sure. I actually have a unique journey. I grew up in Queens, New York. My parents were not golfers. And they decided one day they found a little pitch and putt golf course in the city that was near Shea Stadium that we stumbled upon because we used to go to Mets games and we used to go to the U.S. Open Tennis Center. And so it was right there in the park in Flushing Meadows. So we decided to go check it out. And I was about 8-9 years old when we were playing pitch and putt on a whim. And we just kept doing that for 2 years. We just played, this little course and learned how to chip and putt and pitch the ball around. And we went to the driving range and started getting more into it. So that was my initial experience with getting into golf. But I liked it so much, as well as my parents did. So we decided to pursue it, and I ended up getting involved in junior golf programs in the Metropolitan PGA section, clinics they were having, and PGA professionals encouraged me to pursue playing golf because they saw some kind of potential in me. And so it's great after all these years to hopefully pass on that torch in a way that I can help other juniors now get into the game. But I did play junior golf and played competitively in that section, and then played through high school and got a scholarship to James Madison University, and that's where I actually played college golf for 4 years. So I played competitively from the age of 9 all the way through.
Was there ever a point when you were playing college golf where you thought about the LPGA Tour?
I really enjoyed my college golf experience. I was not the best on the team. I had a good run. I played pretty well my junior and senior year, and but I left college feeling like I wasn't ready, both as far as my game, but also mentally ready to commit to a path to play on tour. I didn't think it was the right thing for me at the time. I knew what a commitment it would be. I knew how hard it would be, and I just didn't feel ready for that. So I decided that I would take a different path, but I just knew I wanted to stay around golf and stay in the business.
Well, we're glad you did, because you've got a lot to contribute, Erika. And, to that vein, I'm somewhat similar, although I always kind of wanted to be a touring pro, and then I kind of changed directions and went into the teaching end of it. And as a teacher, there's a lot of ways to learn. And who were some of your mentors growing up in the business that really influenced your teaching?
The main person that influenced my teaching was a gentleman up in the Met section named Frank Darby, who I still keep in touch with. Yeah, and he was a big junior golf advocate, and saw me play in some junior tournaments. He saw a towel hanging from my golf bag that said Casino Park, and that was one of the public courses I just grew up playing on. And he said, "You're a Casino Park girl? Come on over here. Let me talk to you." So cool. He said that was where I grew up playing. I'm a Queens boy too. And so he just sort of took me under his wing, and we did some lessons later on when I was in high school. And he really helped encourage me and guide me through the process of going off to play in college. So he really knew a lot about that, which was something my parents didn't know a whole lot about. So he was critical in that part of my journey. And then he also taught me and introduced me to a lot of teaching concepts, including some of his favorites. At that time, he introduced me to Ernest Jones, which continued to be a huge influence in my playing career, but also now in my teaching career. So, he taught me about other stuff that was out there, Bob Rotella, all these things that, I would have not otherwise known about, because it was certainly pre-internet. So before you had the ability to get on YouTube and ask a question and pop up with 1,000 answers, he was my main resource for understanding and knowing about things in the golf business. So he really was the main influence, because he exposed me to things that I otherwise, wouldn't have known about, or would have taken me longer to know about. So he's the main guy. Other than that, I really didn't take any lessons from anyone else. And when I got into the business after college and started getting into the teaching side, I really just did a lot of homework at that point, and tried to get involved in the PGA section, go to education events, learn about what was out there, read a ton of books, look at all the latest magazines, and just see what the trends were in teaching and technology. And so I really was self-taught in teaching.
Well, that sounds very good. The PGA of America gives us so many opportunities to learn, to become better instructors. There's so many educational seminars, and all the top instructors in the game are usually coming through somebody's section to talk about their swing theories. And there are so many different swing theories, and there's so many different ways. And we're going to talk a little more about this when we talk about a recent publication. You've just recently published a book, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But I'd like to kind of get your impact or your input on the difference between teaching men versus women. Do you think there's a difference there? Is there a different approach that you use when you're teaching a woman versus a man? As you know, my wife is an LPGA instructor as well. We have this conversation a lot. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
The golf swing is the golf swing, but people are all different. So it's not so much that I find I approach men and women differently on purpose, but I think when I get a feel for somebody's personality, that helps influence how I handle them in a lesson. So, you can have a really type A woman, and you could have a really nervous guy that's very intimidated by the process of learning and making changes. And they don't necessarily fit into any particular category or stereotype. So, clearly everybody's body is different too. So you're going to have tall, lanky women, and you're going to have short, stocky guys, and you're going to have women with large chests, and you're going to have guys with big bellies. And, all those things matter when you try to figure out what to do with somebody's golf swing and how to help them, because you have to create a position for them to swing from that's comfortable. And so I just take everybody individually on their own. I don't, predispose them that, okay, this is a lady, I have to handle her a certain way, or, she's not going to be able to move this way or that way. I just think everybody's got a different skill set, a different background coming into the sport, different, abilities athletically, different physical limitations. So you just kind of have to take everybody for what they have.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And to me, the most important part of any golf lesson is the interview. It's the beginning of the lesson where you really, I start every lesson with a new student. What would you like to achieve today? What do you want to come out of this lesson? And through that conversation, you sort of get insights just in the way they talk. Are they a visual learner? Are they kinesthetic? Are they auditory? Do they care more about looking good? Probably the number one question, when you say, why are you here for a golf lesson? What answers do you usually get?
People usually tell me that they're looking for more consistency. That's like the main, theme.
Everyone
it always seems to be. And sometimes it's because their full swing is failing them, and sometimes it's because their short game is failing them, or it could be a combination of both. But, from shot to shot or from day to day, they're just not seeing that they can reproduce their swing or their mental state in a way that helps them feel more confident. So that's really the biggest issue. So when you can give somebody something tangible to work on to help them build their confidence, then they can get more consistent. And that's really what I always try to achieve, is making people feel like they lead the lesson, knowing what they have to work on and feeling good about it, that they have the opportunity to build their confidence.
That's great. That's great. So your rise in the business has been incredible. You won Teacher of the Year in the Middle Atlantic PGA. You have had some great exposure with Golf Digest magazine. I'd love to hear more about that. Could you tell us a little bit about your involvement with Golf Digest and what kind of deal? Maybe deals is the wrong word, but I know you had like a monthly feature, or it seemed like you were in there several times. Tell us about how that all evolved.
I won my PGA, the local PGA section award in 2012, and that was a really big stepping stone for me because it sort of elevated my, reputation and name into bigger places that, I would get more awareness and recognition from places like Golf Digest. And so I soon got the invitation to apply for the top 40 under 40 teachers in America list. And I was able to get accepted onto that list shortly thereafter, winning the section award. So that started my relationship with Golf Digest. And that allowed me to get to know some of the editors, and they wanted to feature some of the top young instructors in the magazine. And being that there were only 40 of us at the time, the list actually now includes, I think, over 100 of us, but there was really a small group. They were able to and wanted to take the time to feature us all in some different articles. And so I was able to do some photo shoots, and I guess I just proved myself, my ability to deliver a message on camera and my ideas that I was pitching them for articles. I was proactive in asking them to approve or give me feedback on ideas that they might be interested in for content. And so I did get responses back from some of the editors at the magazine saying, yes, we want to do this. And so after we scheduled initial photo shoots and did some videos and we got a good response, I was just invited to do more projects. And luckily, being a female, and that there's probably, to be honest, less of us, in the industry that are teaching at this level, and being young and everything, I just think that it just worked in my favor to have the right timing and the right contacts and just the right recognition to come together to help me promote myself and to be accepted by that level of publication. So it was just a little bit of luck, but certainly a lot of hard work to get to the point where I was even accepted into those circles. So that's kind of the story on that, and it continues to grow now. I mean, some of the guys that I've worked with at Digest are truly friends now, and that doesn't hurt, because if I have an idea and I want to share it with them, they're always willing to listen. They trust me. They know that I'll be able to deliver a good product, and so that goes a long way.
That's a great advantage to have friends in high places like that, and to get your name out there.
You got to be willing to just do it, though. You have to put yourself out there.
Yeah, it's certainly not luck. You make your own luck in this business, I think. Yeah. So that's great, and I want to talk a little bit about your book, and so it kind of leads me to the question about your teaching philosophy. Sure. Would you answer that if I said, "What is your teaching philosophy?" Would you answer that by start a conversation about your book, or do you have a general philosophy that you like to share with our listeners?
My book is a culmination of all my teaching experience and really is a truly well-organized outline of my teaching philosophy, as it's as it's evolved to this point. Will it evolve further? Maybe, but to this point in the 15 years that I've been teaching now, this is sort of where I am, and it seems to make sense. It's been working well for me and my students, and so that's why I decided to sort of pull it together in a format of a book and hopefully some video content as well as we move forward. But my philosophy, to answer your question, is basically that I have found that golfers of all skill levels really play with such inconsistency because they have so much tension and manipulation in their swing due to tension in their body and tension in their mind. And so if we can find ways of reducing that, we usually help them get better. And so when I look back at a lot of the influences for me and what I've learned about the golf swing over the years, it's been both a combination of old school philosophy in the golf swing, as I mentioned earlier, about Ernest Jones was a big one for me, and followed his teachings a lot over the years, combined with a lot of new stuff that I learned about technology and physics. And so trying to put together something that was simple enough for people to feel and have concrete and tangible drills that people could practice that are backed up by truly good sound mechanics that now we can actually prove or validate with technology. That's what I was basically coming up with, is a way to package that for people, and I call it a true swing. Is basically my way of explaining and breaking the golf swing down into sort of manageable concepts, manageable feels, and getting people to swing in a way that they use their body to generate natural momentum and get the club swinging around them so that they don't have to manipulate the actual swinging motion. I think that so many people are guilty of trying to steer their shots and really force impact, or they have ideas on what positions the club needs to be in at a certain time, and they try to make that happen instead of just letting it happen naturally by getting the club in motion and just swinging it around you. So I really focus on, reducing manipulation, promoting the idea of just swinging the club instead of hitting at the ball. And if I can do that for people, it really does fit a wide variety of skill levels, but it also fits a wide variety of people, meaning, different types of bodies, different types of certainly athletic abilities. If we focus on that, a lot of sins are forgiven in the golf swing, and we can make the most of anybody's potential.
Well, that's very good, Erika. And let's talk specifically about your book. It's called Your True Swing, or
A True Swing.
A True Swing. Mm-hmm. It just came out a couple of days ago, isn't that right?
That's
and
right.
Available on Amazon?
Yes, sir.
So because it just came out a couple of days ago, I haven't read it, but what I have been able to do is go and access some videos. Mm-hmm. You have some wonderful videos that give you snippets of what's in the book. And particularly one point that was very interesting to me was the 5 phases of the golf swing. Could you kind of briefly go through those, the names, and kind of how you describe it?
Sure. I'm not reinventing the wheel by any means, but I've sort of put my own terms to a few parts of the golf swing. The first phase of the swing I call the heave, and the idea behind the heave is basically in the takeaway of the swing. To avoid manipulation by the hands and wrists, we try to get the club swinging back using the core muscles of the body, which is going to be your abdominals and your glutes and your legs, to try to rotate the body back in a way that just gets the club swinging on plane and gets it swinging up, so that we don't have to pick it up with our hands, which starts to potentially, change club face position and creates angles that we don't necessarily want. We can get a natural swinging motion moving back and avoid early swing faults by heaving the club back with more of the bigger muscles than the smaller muscles. Then we move into what I call the tipping point. So when the club gets back up about 3/4 in the backswing, I believe that momentum actually kind of slows down a little bit and can naturally help the club, what I call, tip over, and pulls the wrist with it. So everybody's so worried about creating this perfect position at the top of their swing with wrist hinge, or they're worried about their angles of the club. I think it can happen really naturally if you just let it. So I think the club wants to tip over at the top. We have gravity and momentum sort of working to our advantage to allow that to happen. The third phase of the swing is called the fall, and about when the tipping point happens, the transition of the swing, the weight of the club is moving back and behind us, falling over. We actually, our body, if we respond to that and we pick up those cues, we can sort of fall with it and naturally move into our lead leg and fall towards the target in a way that's controlled, but that we, set up basically the beginning of the downswing so we can take care of our weight shift very naturally. That seems to be a big issue for a lot of people, particularly amateur golfers and high handicappers. Then we get into the pivot phase, and that's going to be where the body starts to unwind. If you're already on your front leg, the good news is all you got to do is just turn through. So we unwind the body and we try to work on those mechanics a little bit so people understand the right sequence of motion, and we can do this correctly. The club just follows the leader. So if the body's leading the way, club just naturally comes down with lag, and then we can send it out swinging towards the ball very naturally if our wrists are free and free of tension, free to move without, manipulating it. So again, we're sort of letting the club and our arms and wrists respond to what the body's doing to create all the right mechanics and positions, so we don't have to try to time up impact and try to force it to happen. We just got to let it happen. And again, easier said than done, because mentally we can sort of get in the way of our own selves during this part of the swing where we go to then now release the club to the ball. But when you get a feel for the rest of the phases, the release should be almost automatic if you just don't get in your own way and try to steer it at the last minute. So I think that it's a combination of those phases. It naturally pulls you through to a balanced finish if you just go with the order of motions that I'm describing. And it's something anyone can do. It's not that any of these movements are tough or challenging or put you in weird positions. This is a classic golf swing. It's just my interpretation of how I visualize and can explain to students why and how things are happening that are mechanically optimal for you, so that you can just hopefully find that consistency you've been looking for. And that's the recap of the 5 phases. So we got the heave, the tipping point, the fall, the pivot, and finally the release.
Very good. You heard it here first. Those are the 5 phases. So, the interesting thing for me as a teacher, I've been teaching for 43 years too, and we look at a golf swing and we analyze what needs to be broken down in segments and what part of that segment is more of a priority to work with. Then when we take them out onto the golf course, how do you apply those 5 different phases? Are you teaching them phase 1 in one lesson, phase 2 in a second lesson, and then is there a separate time where you say, okay, we've been through the 5 phases of the golf swing. Now, how do we apply that to playing a game of golf rather than going out and playing golf swing?
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I mean, we want to get to a point where we can be free of thought and get out there and just play golf. Whether you use my approach to this golf swing or not, that's always going to be the challenge we have as coaches and teachers, is how to transition people from the range to the golf course. So I think that, what I'm doing is no different than probably what we've been doing our whole lives as teachers is, we're trying to encourage people to make a change somehow in their swing that will influence their motion. And so you're changing motor patterns ultimately. But I hope to do so through also intention. When people get a different picture of the swing in their mind and they change their intention, it changes mechanics. So it's a little bit less about, getting into certain positions. I'm trying to help people feel the flow of the swing. And when they get the feeling of that flow, maybe they can wrap it up into a wholesome feel. And then that's easier to bring to the golf course instead of like nitpicking a certain, spot or position. It is important sometimes to look at those things, and we take video and we might, use sensors or radar to check out what's happening with the swing or the ball flight. But at the end of the day, it has to be something that either as part of their routine, they're putting a feel in their swing that's manageable, that they can incorporate into a routine, and then at some point it becomes automated enough that they can just trust that out on the golf course. So it's teaching, and then it's coaching, and finding ways to make that transition is very, very important. And I don't necessarily break it down where just one lesson we're working on, one phase, and then it's like they have to come back every lesson for a different phase. Typically there's a problem area, and then that's the phase I'm honing in on. And maybe for some people, fixing the heave fixes the rest of it. And for other people, they might do the backswing just fine. And their issue is really that they're not completing the fall, or they're not doing the fall or the pivot at the right time. So once they sort of get an understanding of what it is and why they might be falling short in a certain area of their swing, then we work on making those changes. So it really, again, I'm trying to customize and pick out where the student needs help, and then personalize my approach to them.
So if somebody's got a natural tipping point, you don't even need to discuss that with them.
No, it may not ever come up.
As far as tension goes in the golf swing, a lot of teachers use words like coil and stretch. Is that something you try to stay away from, words and terminology like that, for the natural kind of flowing feeling? Is that a saboteur of the golf swing, those type of thoughts?
Oh, it definitely can be. I mean, people have all kinds of different tips they've heard over the years that create tension, and they've heard they need to get to impact and they have to have the handle leaning in front of the in front of the ball, and just different things that may or may not work for them because they're trying to put the club into certain positions, and then when they try to do it, they add tension. So I think we have to sort of work a little less hard to force the golf swing, and if there's tension in the swing that's acceptable, it does probably happen in how we engage the body to move, and we have to have balance. And so when we turn back and through with our big muscles, we can't be so loosey-goosey that we're rolling on the outside edges of our feet and we lose our structure of our legs. I mean, we want to have really good stability in our lower body. And so, there is a feeling that we are engaged and we're already moving in an athletic position. So if there's tension, it's going to be that we're stabilizing ourselves in particularly the core and the lower body as we're swinging, so that the thing that the pieces that need to be as free as possible are the arms and the wrists. That's what we need to act almost like this giant flail, so that can propel the mechanics of the club moving through the ball without guiding it too much. So again, if there's tension or if there's engagement happening and the body is doing something that's quote unquote working hard, it's just that we're trying to stay stable. And sometimes people work so hard in their arms and wrists because their body is not stable. But it's a lot easier to control big muscles than it is to control small muscles, particularly if you're somebody that's not practicing 20 hours a week.
Well said, Erika. I think there's a lot to that. Tension in the hands is a bad thing. Stability in the hips and coiling, that may seem like tightness, but it's really not. It's stability. And I think that's what's really important, is how we choose our words. And then it really brings me to my next question, which is old school versus new age technology. We seem to have a group of people that are intent on proving the old school guys are wrong, the terminology that they've used that are wrong. And I don't necessarily have a preference one way or another. I think the new age technology is fantastic. The way we can measure results now through FlightScope and TrackMan and Body Track and K-Vest, we have more information accessible to us nowadays than we've ever had, and I think it only serves to make us a little better. But I do have a problem sometimes when the new age guys say the old age guys are wrong. Do you have any opinions about that at all?
Well, I think that when we're measuring stuff with whether it's 3D sensors and all these kind of different pieces of technology, and we can't deny if an X-ray or a MRI is saying that something's broken, because it might be broken, or we can't deny what the new technology is proving. It's just that we have to respect that the old school instruction still has its place and its value, because those guys didn't really know the why or the what that was happening. They just saw what they were seeing with their own eyes or with very basic cameras maybe. And they were teaching feels. They were teaching what they thought was right, and it worked for people then. So it wasn't wrong. Maybe their explanation of why they thought it worked was wrong. And so we just can say, hey, pay homage to the fact that these guys did some amazing stuff back in the day. Maybe they didn't quite have the understanding we have now, but how they sold their message still is probably accurate, because again, if it works for people, then it's good. So I think that, the old school messages that I have used now and I've brought into my book and my philosophy is really, I focused on the feels and the imagery that they were selling and teaching, less about the technical aspects or the physics of what they were trying to say, because they were wrong in some capacities now that we know what we know because of technology. So I just think it's a combination of taking the best from the old school stuff and then also, paying certainly close attention to what we're learning with all the new technology, because that's certainly going to help us have a better understanding moving forward of how we can help people.
I would agree with that. And I liked your example of an MRI or an X-ray. When you go to a doctor and he looks at the X-ray, he sees things that he doesn't need to tell his patient.
Correct.
And that's probably the correct use of some of this technology is we might look at all these numbers, but scare our students away if we start talking about your spin axis was a little bit off, or your path was wrong and your angle of attack was wrong. And we end up sometimes chasing numbers instead of fixing our golf students. And
right.
So, I mean, back in the day when I had a video camera, I could tell by looking at the club face post-impact if there was over-rotation or under-rotation, whether it was 2 degrees or 5 degrees, wasn't necessary for me to fix
right.
the problem. You still have to, even after seeing what the numbers are, you still have to have the solutions. And the solutions can be very much based in old school technology, but there's certainly a lot of opinions out there. So let's move on to a topic about what makes a good teacher. I have to say I have a bone to pick with Pat Perez. I don't know if you pay attention to any of these PGA talk shows, but he recently was blasting Michael Breed. Michael Breed was National PGA Teacher of the Year. Pat Perez says he's never taught anybody that's been on tour, and he can't break 80 himself, so he must be a lousy teacher. This all kind of started after his rant with Brandel Chamblee saying that Ian Poulter didn't play to win, and he goes, I think Pat should stick to what he knows, because first of all, the PGA Teacher of the Year is not a PGA Tour Teacher of the Year. It's right. A national award that our organization, the PGA of America, awards. And to me, there's a lot more skill involved in taking a 100 shooter and turning them into an 85 shooter than working with a touring pro who was already good before he got to him. So your opinion of what makes a good teacher?
Yeah, I think what makes a good teacher is your ability to help people improve. And when I say people, it could be all levels of players. It's just because, for example, myself, I mean, I would say pretty much everyone I teach is a mid to high handicapper. I have some low handicappers and competitive players and juniors and so forth that I teach, and some college players and college-bound players, but I don't work with any tour players. And what I do on a day-to-day basis is help the average golfer get better. And, I have a track record for that, and I've been recognized by students and by my peers for that, luckily. And so I think there's a lot of teachers in that same category, because we are not all fortunate enough to teach tour players every day. And you know what? To be honest, I'm not sure that that's what I would enjoy. Personally, I like teaching the average player and seeing somebody go from shooting 100 to shooting 85 over the course of a year or whatever it might take. So I think that that's very rewarding. And so being a good teacher is getting results with students, no matter what kind of students they are. And I think being a good communicator is really important. That usually kind of goes hand in hand with getting results. Adapting your message to the person that's in front of you and trying to basically help that person get to meet their goals. So customizing what it is that you're doing with the student and finding ways of following up with them and picking the right fixes for them in what they want to get out of the lesson or the series of lessons or the coaching plan that you're doing. So that's what makes a good teacher, in my opinion. It's not necessarily the high-profile clients on the list.
Very good, Erika. Well, just let's summarize or talk about what your average day is like here at Creighton Farms, and then we want to talk about how people can get in touch with you for lessons. So what is an average day for Erika Larkin like at Creighton Farms?
Gosh, I show up in the early morning. I usually drop my kids off at school or at the bus, and then pop over here 9:30 or so after they get off and running, and set myself up for the day. I usually take lessons from that time through, the afternoon, and we have programs here at Creighton Farms that I do run for members, but I do see a lot of guests that come in for lessons, non-members. So I teach a mix of both private lessons and some classes. We have a junior golf program here that we're growing, which is doing very nice. So I kind of do a little bit of everything in terms of the teaching aspect here, and I enjoy taking some time to follow up with students via email or some of the teaching applications that I use, and also, try to keep continuing to challenge myself to put content out there. And in my off time, I will try to write a little blog post or maybe pitch an idea to a magazine or follow up with contacts in the industry to help keep getting myself out there. So it's a combination of both, teaching, a little bit of admin, a little bit of class prep, and then some self-promotion.
Well, you're a busy woman, from mother to wife to director of instruction, a Golf Digest staff member. I don't know how you do it, but you do a great job of it.
Thank you, Mark.
So tell us how people can get in touch with you and how they can get your book so that they can learn more about what you're doing.
Thank you. I can be found on my website, which is erikalarkin.com. That's ERIKALARKIN. Also, atrueswing.com is the link for the book page, which is also a part of that website. The book can be found on Amazon directly, and there's links on my site to it. You can follow me on Facebook under my name or under A True Swing as well. I have a page dedicated to the book now, and I'm just going to continue to post content, but I can be reached via email, website, phone, so please follow up and let me know how I can help you if you're in the area.
Is there a phone number you want to share with the listeners?
Sure. Phone number is 703-864-9017 is my direct number.
Well, Erika, thank you so much for spending time with us on Let's Talk Golf. It's been a great day to learn, and you've got a lot to offer, and I hope the listeners will buy her book and maybe come out for a lesson. So we've had a great time talking to you.
Thank you, Mark, for the time. I appreciate it.
All right.
Great chatting with you today, and good luck with your show.
Thank you so much. Well, that concludes another episode of Let's Talk Golf. I'm your host, PGA professional Mark Guttenberg. I hope you enjoyed the show and will subscribe to iTunes and write a review. And don't forget to tune in to the next episode of Let's Talk Golf.